when we see the thoracic spine that doesn't move well, remember we've been talking a lot about what is the fundamental movement of each articulation. That's what we're going to look at first. That's what we're going to try to intervene on first, because that's where we think the biggest leverage point is, right? The elbow, if it doesn't flex or extend, that's where we want to go. If a knee doesn't flex or extend, that's where we want to go. In the thoracic spine is a very different animal than anywhere else. And we have to understand the nuances of the thoracic spine. So we were having a discussion over there about the thoracic spine, and the question was, if I see a thoracic spine limitation, where is the most fundamental motion that I'm going to start to reestablish first? In my mind, it's flexion, which is counter to what most people would think. It's counter to what most people do, because most people are like, well, people are always like this, so I got to start to reestablish extension, okay? And everybody would agree that that's probably the common thing, and everybody would agree when I say you'd want to reestablish flexion first. You're like, that doesn't make any sense? Yes? Yes? Okay, so let's go through this. We have to understand, and it's based on, because fundamental joint motions are based on the anatomy of the joint. We saw that's why we have to characterize joints the way that we have to characterize them, right? The elbow is primarily a hinge, so we need to make it move like a hinge. We have to understand thoracic spine orientation, okay? First of all, we have a rib cage, which is different than in the lumbar spine or in the cervical spine. Secondarily, we have to understand facet joint orientation, okay? So in the lumbar spine, my facets go like this, okay? So I have a vertebra, my facets go like this, okay? So it makes sense then, when I look at lumbar spine motion in a cat-camel position, that I would really want to try to reestablish flexion or extension, right? Facets go like this. They're planar with two flexion or extension. Thoracic spine facets go like this, okay? Cervical spine facets go like this, which is why in the cervical spine, when we look at cars in the cervical spine, we go flexion, rotation, lateral flexion, extension, okay? The thoracic spine, because the facets go like this, where's the easiest leverage point that I can make in the thoracic spine? Flexion. And it's going to slide a lot more in flexion and rotation than it's ever going to slide into extension. This is the biggest misnomer that we have in thoracic spine work. Because what do we see in thoracic spine work? Just ram it into extension and try to rotate in extension. First of all, nobody functions in extension rotation. Nobody functions over here. Everybody functions in flexion and rotation. It's way easier for me to flex and rotate my thoracic spine than it is to go into extension and rotate without feeling like I can't go any further. And then what do I feel? A lot of stress through my lumbar spine. So the biggest bang for the buck and the biggest leverage point that you're going to have in the thoracic spine is flexion. And people are like, well, everybody's stuck in flexion because they all sit at desks like this. That's global blocked thoracic flexion. Nobody sits segmentally in flexion. So when we see a cat camel and we see this, that's not segmental flexion. That's just a global kyphosis increase. That's not segmental flexion. So then when I say, okay, you don't have segmental flexion, now go into extension and they do this, which is a lack of extension, everybody gets horny and they go, oh, you don't have extension. But you can't, the biggest bang for the buck is not in extension. How many people here have been successful very quickly cueing people in thoracic extension? Yeah. It's hard. People don't know thoracic extension. And thoracic extension has a point of diminishing returns before you start to go here, right? But I can start to really increase thoracic spine motion if I start to cue them in better flexion and really start to get them to drive, I can't do it, so I'm not going to attempt, but really start to get them to drive flexion through the thoracic spine. If I can get this to happen, will that automatically open motion through the thoracic spine? Yes. If I can get this to happen, can I train rotation? Yes. Should I train rotation and flexion? Yes. Think of any rotational-based person. Are they ever going to rotate back here? No. Do they rotate here? Yes.